Hi everyone, it's Miss Champagne. All right, so today I'm teaching from my workbook called How to Transition from Your Current Job to Your Teaching Job. This is the corresponding workbook to the book simply titled Transition from Your Current Job to Your Teaching Job. All right, so we are discussing chapter 11, which is signing the contract. Okay, so you have sent in your interview documents, you followed up, you interviewed, you received the offer. Now let's talk about signing the contract. Okay, I have some warm-up questions for you. Number one, will you receive a written contract or an oral contract? Now, in Japan, and in Rwanda and Ghana, I've heard that oftentimes people do receive oral contracts. And also in Japan, another thing my friend made clear to me, he said even though that we have written contracts, those contracts are like more, they can be fluid because the terms and conditions can change. And of course, Americans, we understand that, but we will not, for the most part, go to any country and accept the job without a contract. You know, it's binding. It's binding by law. Now, that's not to say that Americans, we can't negotiate or change the contract, but we need the contract in writing, Just accepting an oral contract is not something a lot of Americans do, especially in Japan, in this market. And I would also suggest the same in the Ghana and Rwanda market as well. You need a contract on paper. I do understand their culture is a little bit different where it's more of an oral contract, but I'm just kind of against that, just in case they say, oh, well, there was never any paper written, there was never a contract. So you just want to make sure that your bases are covered, okay? Now, let me see. Now, if you did receive an oral contract, which says that we offer you this position, that is binding. But if it doesn't have the contract attached, all the terms and conditions are not laid out. So when I had gotten a job in Japan, this was a few years ago, they offered me the contract, but it was like an oral contract. And I was like, that's great. But before I quit this job, and I talk about that in the book I'm writing. But anyways, before I stop this job, I need confirmation that you're actually going to give me this new job. I can't quit this one without having this. So eventually they gave me the written contract because like in their culture, if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do something, which is great, but I'm not from that culture. All right, now, step 10. Let's see. Okay, so step 10. So when you get your contract, will you simply email, print it and email it and send it back? Or do you need to formally submit it in person, okay? Those are some things to think about. Are you being treated differently than, as a local hire than from the people who are overseas employees? So oftentimes, like in Japan, a lot of the English teachers, we get paid a lot more than the Japanese English teachers because they're local hires. And the reason is, number one, especially the Americans and the ones from the UK, the ones from Australia, South Africa, those countries, we demand a lot more, and if you're not going to pay us what we want, then we're just simply not going to do it. That's number one. Number two, we're fluent, not fluent, we're native English speakers for the most part. Number three, we don't have family here. We don't have a job here. Well, we're getting a job, but we don't have a car. We don't have accommodation. So of course it costs more for us to be here. So they have to pay us more. Okay, and so you need to decide that, okay, this foreigner is getting paid more than me. That's not fair. But I just tried to take into consideration that the foreigner probably doesn't have any lifeline there besides that job, okay? All right, now, if the foreign hirees are receiving more benefits, can you deal with that in a professional manner? Because in Japan, a lot of the Japanese English teachers will become a little bit envious, and rightfully so. I would feel the same way if I lived in America and foreigners were coming and getting more money than I was, and we were doing the same job or a similar job. But you need to learn to deal with that, okay? All right, so guys, today we talked about Chapter 11, and this is signing the contract. If you have any questions, please contact me. Bye.